Excuse me, sir, but I thought you should know that the subject is awake.
Eshiva, I have a job for you.
Hey babe, how'd the shopping go? Get anything nice?
The year is 2009. Tomb Raider Underworld had been out for a year and was met with critical and commercial success. Unbeknownst to everyone, Crystal Dynamics were already hard at work on the concept for the next Tomb Raider game. The team wanted to take Tomb Raider into a far more mature and darker direction, with the initial idea being a more survival horror approach that would take inspiration from games like Shadow of the Colossus. The project was dubbed Tomb Raider Ascension and was to feature a child companion for Lara called Izumi, who had the power to control water, which would then be used to help Lara battle giant supernatural enemies. Concepts for Ascension also included traveling around an island on motorbike, riding on horseback, using a grappling hook to climb with, and even using a makeshift flamethrower to fight back ghosts and other monsters. Thankfully, Eidos had the sense to see that this direction, whilst bold, was a bit too much of a drastic departure from the series formula, but it's clear that Crystal wanted to create something different with this Tomb Raider, something that was different from the flamboyant and over-the-top campy charm that the series had been known for, and we would get to see that something different at E3 2011. This debut trailer, dubbed Turning Point, shows what we'd later to come to know as the introduction sequence to Tomb Raider 2013. It shows a young Lara on a ship in her cabin, just as the ship that she's on begins to fall apart during an intense storm. Then after that, we get shots of a rather bloodied and battered Lara Croft tending to some wounds, before the camera pans out to reveal her standing beside a ship wrecked on the shoreline with another much older looking pirate galleon out in the distance amongst some debris. The trailer then ends with the tagline, "A survivor is born," which immediately indicated that this was going to be yet another retelling of Lara's origins, and the story of how she became the Tomb Raider that we know her as today. This motif of survival became a recurring theme during promotional events, with several developers describing the game as an intense and gritty story of Lara Croft and her ascent from a frightened young woman into a hardened survivor. To help pen this game's story, the team decided to enlist the skills of Rhianna Pratchett, daughter of the famous fantasy novelist Terry Pratchett, who was brought on to help reshape the character of Lara Croft into someone who, in their words, would be a much more relatable and humanized person. On top of that, Crystal would be ramping up their use of motion performance capture techniques by enlisting the talents of several professional actors, one of which was the new voice behind this version of Lara Croft, Camilla Luddington, a British-born actor who's most notably known for her roles in Californication and Grey's Anatomy. All of this was in service of providing a more authentic cinematic experience to the player. Tomb Raider has certainly dabbled with adding fancy camera work and expanding on the lore of the series with much more complex and advanced storytelling as the series had progressed, but this was set to be a Tomb Raider experience like no other, an experience that would draw you into its world with a story that was gritty, dark, brutal, and totally uncompromising. Of course, with this new era comes a new redesign of our hero, with her design in this game moving away from the more exaggerated and voluptuous features found in the past two eras and adopting a more realistic depiction of what a woman with an athletic build would actually look like, with the facial likeness for this version of Lara provided by model Megan Farquhar. Needless to say, the hype for this game was through the roof after it got announced, and with each teaser trailer that got dropped by Crystal and Eidos, fans got even more excited to see what this incarnation of Lara would be like. So let's not waste any more time as we find out how this little bird got her wings. The game opens with the young and aspiring adventurer Lara Croft aboard a ship called the Endurance, where she does her best wise man once said impression by paraphrasing Rachel Dawes from Batman Begins.
A famous explorer once said that the extraordinary is in what we do, not who we are.
But it's not who you are underneath. It's what you do that defines you.
Moments later, we see Lara relaxing in her cabin, listening to the latest Geordie Bob mixtape, when suddenly the ship begins to violently thrash around, throwing Lara to the ground in the process. In between moments of Lara getting swept away by water and shots of her trying to escape, we get more narration about how in our darkest moments, when life flashes before us, we find something that keeps us going. Just as it seems like she's about to drown, one of her crewmates, a man called Jonah, manages to pull her out of the water to safety. Then seconds later, we see another man ahead of Lara calling out to her on the other side of the now bisected ship. This then prompts Lara to sprint out to the edge of the split to try and leap towards the man and grab his hand. She manages to slow motion jump across to him, but because both their hands are slippery from the rain, the man loses his grip and Lara is dropped into the ocean. Shortly after that, Lara gets washed up onto a nearby shore, mere feet away from where the rest of her crewmates have ended up. She desperately tries to call out to her friends, but because of the fact that they're all squabbling and because of how loud the storm is, they can't hear her. Jonah! Just as she's gotten her bearings and we think she's safe, she's suddenly knocked out by a mysterious person and we cut to black, and the Square Enix logo then fades into view. As openings go, it's a pretty effective one. It doesn't waste your time trying to overly explain the plot or give everyone's backstory to you. It instead just throws you straight into the action, giving you everything that you need to know at the time. Lara's going off on an adventure to the Dragon's Triangle, shit goes down, and now she's shipwrecked and stranded on an island off the south coast of Japan. And believe me, shit goes down in this game. The screen then fades up to show Lara awakening to find that she's been captured, tied up in a sack, and hung upside down in a cave like a satanic Christmas decoration. From there, the player then has to move around to swing Lara towards a nearby fire in order to burn the ropes binding her so she can drop down and escape. As soon as you set fire to yourself, you then fall down to the ground where Lara impales herself on a piece of wood that just happened to be sticking up out of the ground. Ouch. Once you've then mashed the right button to pull it out of her, you then begin exploring through the caves to try and work out where to go, with the screen phasing in and out of being blurry and distorted to simulate the extreme trauma of what she's going through.
Oh god.
The caves are full of hundreds of human bones and skulls littered all around the place, as well as lots of red candles that I presume were on sale at the local Yamatai Yankee candle branch. There's also a body with its limbs strung up in front of a cave painting, which originally was supposed to be another one of Lara's friends called Stephanie, but this was ultimately cut from the final release. Once you've managed to find a torch, you then get to set fire to various objects blocking your path in order to progress, and this also serves to teach the player that they can use fire as a puzzle-solving tool for the rest of the game. Weirdly enough, this use of fire to burn stuff, I don't think has been back since Tomb Raider: The Last Revelation. I could be wrong though. In the chamber, you then get introduced to perhaps my least favourite mechanic of the series, which is almost directly lifted from the Batman Arkham games. Similar to the detective vision from those games, the survival instinct mechanic makes a lot of sense on paper. It allows new players who might get stuck to have some assistance from the game by turning the whole screen monochrome, then highlighting items, enemies, and other points of interest in order to help them out. This means players spend less time aimlessly wandering around trying to figure out what to do, and more time dedicated to actually playing through the rest of the game. However, the reason why I'm personally not a fan of this is that it can be easily abused to let the game do most of the cerebral work for you, and perhaps more crucially, it's something that you really can't turn off. Of course, you can always exercise some self-restraint to prevent this by not touching the button at all to activate it, something that I did on my second time revisiting this game for this video, so ultimately it really isn't that much of a big deal. But having the option for players to turn all of this sort of thing off would have been a really nice option, and it actually was something that they ended up doing in Shadow of the Tomb Raider, a game with some of the best difficulty customization options I think I've ever seen. As you enter a crawl space to escape that room, the man who kidnapped Lara from earlier suddenly jumps out of the darkness and grabs her leg to stop her from escaping. This then prompts you to mash some more buttons to wriggle free, and doing so allows you to escape right before the entrance of the crawl space collapses. Further on, the crawl space becomes increasingly more claustrophobic, with more of it submerged in water, forcing you to have to wade through with barely enough space to keep your head above it. Then the final chamber of this tutorial area is a physics puzzle, where you have to use fire and other contraptions to detonate fuel barrels blocking the exit so you can finally escape. After you do this, you begin one of many action set pieces that this game has, where you run away from the camera whilst the environment begins to explode, crumble, and tumble down around you. There are several chasms to jump over, routes that get closed off due to falling debris, and to make things worse, this bitch shows up again to try and stop you escaping. This then prompts you to mash some more buttons to wriggle free, and doing so allows you to escape right before the entrance to the crawl space collapses right on top of him. Ouch. But once he's finally dead, you clear the last gap and play a sequence where you mash more buttons and twiddle more sticks to move out of the way of debris and manically scramble up the slope and out to freedom. Once out of that literal hellhole, Lara finally gets to breathe some fresh air. Then, as she stumbles to her feet to recover and just take in what the hell just happened back there, the camera cuts to an over-the-shoulder perspective where we see an epic shot of Lara looking over the image of several shipwrecks, plane chassis, and other various craft that have all crash-landed on the island. Then, as the camera pans over to her left, we see a brilliant sunset piercing through the clouds as we finally get a shot of the game's title. Bam! Tomb Raider. Bitches. Well, after that harrowing experience, I guess it's finally time for us to play through this grittier and more realistic depiction of how the sassy and confident Lara Croft became the Tomb Raider that we know as today. And so far I have to say that I'm pretty impressed with the level of immersion and cinematic quality on display here, and all of this grit and grime has me really curious to see what this game has in store for us next. Soon afterwards, we're given control of Lara again, and the next obstacle has you crossing over a gap on a tree and then climbing across another one using a decrepit old World War II plane. And once you've made it to the other side, you eventually find a backpack with a camcorder inside that we later find out was used by her friend Sam Nishimura. No, not that one, although that is a weird coincidence. In fact, if they did retcon him to be her father in the unified timeline, then I'd imagine that the conversation they had in Legend would be a little bit something like this.
Thank you, Nishimura-san. By the way, how's Sam? Your daughter and my bestie?
Oh, you know, she's, been possessed by Himiko again. Standard Saturday, really. She then puts the camera away, somewhere, and finds a two-way radio which she later uses to contact her friends. Assuming that they're not too far away, Lara goes to follow the trail, only for the ledge that she grabs to crumble away, causing her to slide down yet another slope and end up further away than when she started. Sorry, did I say slide? I meant bounce around like a brick in a tumble dryer. But soon after that, Lara manages to find some shelter from the rain. A shaken, traumatized, and cold-feeling Lara Croft then takes a sip of rainwater, and then tries once again to use the radio to call for help. But still, there's nothing but static. At this point, it's pretty safe to say that Lara has been through quite the ordeal already, hasn't she? She's been shipwrecked on an island that she doesn't know, she's been separated from all of her friends, she's then been kidnapped by some random basement dweller and tied up, she's then been impaled, and she's also had the piss slapped out of her trying to escape from this guy. Doesn't really sound like the type of gap year that she had in mind now, does it? She could really do with a win here, and thankfully she does get one, in the form of a single match which she carefully uses to make campfire and keep warm. Yeah, real Fifth Element stuff right here. She uses this moment to switch on Sam's camcorder that she found earlier, and it's through Sam's eyes that we're introduced to the cast of characters we see throughout our adventure. This brief glimpse into life before the shipwreck provides additional context to who these people are, and why Lara has them helping her to find this lost island of myth. Essentially, Sam has documented the crew's journey to Yamatai by capturing various behind-the-scenes goings-on. Throughout the game, we get various different glimpses into each character's personalities and what kind of relationships they had with each other and to Lara.
Who's this little fox, huh?
Oh, she's cute, huh? Yeah, it's Alicia.
Alicia.
It's my daughter.
Oh.
14 years old.
Do me a favor and just have a seat right over there on the other side of the bar.
This scene at the beginning has Lara arguing with the crew's token egotist, a TV archaeologist and part-time stupid sexy Flanders man called Dr. Whitman, with the topic being about which direction they needed to take in order to search for Yamatai. Whitman argues there's no merit in straying from the path set out by previous explorers, whereas Lara argues the opposite, saying that they should ignore them and instead head the other way. Of course, Whitman, wanting to take full credit for the discovery to not only get a great rating for his TV show, but also, as we find out later in one of the many journal entries found on the island, because his wife is currently divorcing him and he's trying to prove himself not a failure, he objects to this idea. Most of the crew then throw in their 2 cents about how they feel about this trip, mostly bad, but thankfully Lara's longtime mentor, totally not Sean Bean, steps in to say do it for Yorkshire, and the team decide to go with Lara's decision.
Here's the soon-to-be world-famous archaeologist, Lara Croft, in her native habitat. She's on the hunt for the lost kingdom of Yamatai, home to the fabulous Himiko, mythical Sun Queen, and ancestor of yours truly.
Shadowing? And thus begins the next segment of the game, hilariously named Woman vs. Wild, like it's a series on a US Food Network show or something. Here is where Lara acquires her first weapon of the game, which is a bow and arrow left on a corpse that's hanging from a tree. Then it's off to hunt some local wildlife in order to scavenge for some food, and sorry to any vegans or vegetarians in the chat here, because you have no choice. I can assure you I'm pressing all the Fs to pay respects here.
That's the cutest fucking thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
So off we go, weapon in hand to hunt down one of the nearby deers, with this scenario used to teach the player about how the combat system works. So I'm guessing by now that you would be rightly expecting this game to be setting you up for some kind of hunger system, where you would have to hunt down these animals in order to get food to maintain some kind of hunger bar or stamina system. But the reality is that there's nothing of any sort in this game at all, and you don't even need to hunt down animals for food. So, to me, this seems a bit like a missed opportunity, because it seems like they were going to go with this as an idea, and just didn't. Instead, the only thing you really gain from killing animals in this game are materials that feed into the crafting system. So really, if you wanted to go for a more pacifist approach, then you really could choose to ignore the animals altogether. Except for the wolves. Wolves are dicks. So after killing the deer, we walk up to its body to be able to loot its corpse. The scene is played out dramatically enough, with Lara being forced to do something that she really doesn't want to do in order to survive, a recurring theme in this game, which is almost immediately undercut by me accidentally discovering that I could use Lara's scramble ability to bolt into the deer's corpse and then yeet it across the area like a hockey puck. So then, naturally, I spent the next 10 or so minutes hunting down every animal that I could to see how many of them would do the same thing, and it turns out all of them did. It got so out of hand that the game had to flat out tell me to stop and go find something else to do, which just made it even funnier for me.
Stop it. Get some help.
Anyway, right after you kill your first animal, you get a memory of Lara's mentor, who tells Lara that if she's ever lost, she can always use the lay of the land and the stars in the sky to find her way back home. And maybe Google Maps if she has signal.
Remember, lass, if you ever get stuck and need to find where to go, just look to the lay of the land and the stars in the sky to guide you back to safety. Or you could pour yourself a nice big old cup of Yorkshire tea gold and it will send you straight home. And if you don't have any Yorkshire tea, well, you're fucked. But once you've explored the area a bit and found various plants, items, and ammo scattered about the place, you return to your camp to cook the food you've hunted and, most importantly, level up your skills. The skill system is split up into 3 categories, with the first skill that you unlock being in the survivalist category, with the others not becoming available until later on. These skills essentially grant bonuses such as extra experience or extra ammo when scavenging, extra damage resistance, additional battle maneuvers, as well as a whole bunch of extra takedown moves as well. Yes, we have seen this type of skill set system used in other games prior to this one, but this is the first time the series has dabbled with this concept, and I think this does a really good job of further emphasizing Lara's journey from fresh-faced castaway to hard-boiled survivalist. Soon after you acquire your first skill, you hear the actual voice of Roth broadcasting a mayday signal through the radio waves. Lara then frantically reaches for the radio to respond, and the two of them catch up on what they've been up to. Naturally feeling like this whole ordeal is primarily her fault, Lara begins to break down, but Roth quickly refocuses her by letting her know that an SOS has been sent and that he's told everyone to meet at his location. The next morning, Lara sets off to find her friends, and eventually after navigating through some more caves accessed via an old World War II era bunker, she surfaces to find her first of several different pickaxes found throughout this game. This axe is one of many tools available at Lara's disposal on her adventure, and using it allows her to open up certain doors, material caches, and even certain crates when upgraded. This tool also works as a traversal tool that allows Lara to climb up certain walls in order to reach certain areas she otherwise couldn't do without it.
This axe, as well as the bow that she uses in this game, quickly became part of this new Lara's identity. So much so that in the next game onwards, she's given 2 of these axes to use. And also, both the axe and the bow are featured heavily in the game's marketing too. Almost like they wanted these items to be the new dual pistols of the series. Shortly after exiting the creepy bunker, Lara comes across her friend Sam, who is thankfully still alive and well. She is also with another castaway called Matthias, a man that looks like a human Spotswood from Team America, who appears to have been living on this island for quite some time. The trio take a seat by a campfire they've made, and whilst Sam waxes lyrical to a totally not evil we promised Matthias about the legend of the Sun Queen Himiko and about her ancestral connection to Yamatai, Lara passes out either from boredom or just more likely exhaustion. Then moments later, Lara wakes up to find both Sam and Matthias gone, once again being left alone in the wilderness to fend for herself. And then, in perhaps one of the more contrived moments from this game, she manages to step onto a bear trap that was left on the floor, which attracts a nearby pack of wolves that start to attack her. This segment has you pinned down to the ground with only your bow to defend yourself from attacks, so it's a good thing then that the wolves have a sense of fair play here and attack you one at a time by leaping from the bushes. You're also given an extra window of opportunity to land the perfect kill shot, with the game going into slow motion during their attacks. But of course you can still fail this and end up dying one of many gruesome deaths in this game. Yeah, this game certainly likes to beat the crap out of Lara in this one. And she goes through a lot of punishment in this game, and it's all because the developers really wanted to show that she's a more vulnerable and less confident character in this game, so that we, the player, would sympathise with her more. Essentially, they were trying to tell us that while she's not the Tomb Raider that we know yet, she's strong, she's adaptable, and she's going to be able to make it through no matter what's thrown at her because she's a survivor, baby. I'm a survivor! What the hell was that? Thankfully, it's not long until all the wolves are dealt with, and she's rescued by some members of the Endurance who are out looking for her and Sam. The group then split up to search for the remaining crew members, with Jonah, Reyes, Grim, and Alex going off to find Sam and Matthias, whilst Lara is left with the Me Too era Ned Flanders to look for Roth. I would like to point out that they effectively left a recently crippled and less mobile person alone with the most questionable member of their team. But nope, Lara's able to move around and walk about just fine. If anything, this just made her more agile. The following area acts as another place to briefly hunt for collectibles, with a big gate up in the northern part of the area blocking our progress. Sadly, our axe isn't strong enough to turn the crank in its current state, so we need to gather more materials to make it stronger now. To do this, we have to find crafting materials hidden in various chests around the area, which when collected can be used at the campsite to upgrade the axe. Somehow. You have more documents and scrap to find, but you can also collect GPS caches that reward you with bonus experience, and find relics scattered about the islands that you can pick up and view in the item screen. Often you'll pick up these and Lara will remark about what this item is and who it previously belonged to. Some range from items from the Kamakura period, but also they can be items from just about anywhere and at any time. Each object that you find has its own history with the island of Yamatai, and you can fully examine them in the new item menu, which allows you to fully rotate an artifact around, similar to how you can in games like Resident Evil. Often this is just for show, but you can sometimes find extra details that tell you more about the item's origins, and it's a nice incentive to inspect everything you collect and actually learn something about their history instead of, ooh, shiny foreign thing, me likey. Just to take a minute here to praise the game's attention to detail, I actually managed to run the text off of one of these artifacts through Google Translate on my phone, and it actually turned up more information about the artifact, which was really cool. Credit where credit is due, the world building in this game is really damn good, just so long as you don't skim over it. Of course, that's not to say that all of this game's world building is exclusive to the various trinkets and documents that you find. Far from it. There are so many neat little details and flourishes littering the environments you explore that tell you a lot about the island's history and how its current inhabitants have been living on it. Partially this consists of piles of junk and bones being littered about the place in various caves, but mostly this consists of various boats, planes, and other mechanical structures that have been repurposed and fashioned into housing, bridges, and other various tools to suit different needs. On the other hand, you have a wealth of Japanese history to uncover that's scattered all over the island, but also there are several more modern areas around the island that date back to World War II, specifically during the Pacific War. Each area have documents that can be found in various places as well as hidden around the island, and they give a much deeper insight into the various characters we already know, like the Endurance crew, or ones that we never get to see at all, like a Nazi commander or a Japanese soldier. All are fully voice acted, so you can really get the emotional tone from that particular entry, and it can really help to reveal a certain character's true nature as well. Case in point, James Whitman, who is just about the dumbest motherfucker in this entire game for reasons that will become clear very soon, who thought to jot down all of his various true intentions on various pieces of paper and then leave them on the ground for Lara to just casually find, or anyone else for that matter.
I'm on to something here. Lara, you remember her, my young protege. She has real data to back up her theories, but she doesn't have my savvy. It's going to be my name on the discovery and my face in front of the cameras. If this all pans out, the show will be huge. If you want to leave me then, I promise I won't fight you, but please, just wait on it. I can't have this kind of publicity muddling my image, please.
Lara returns to Whitman after upgrading her axe, and then shortly after opening the gate for both of them and entering into the next area, they are then ambushed by a group of dodgy-looking castaways who pretend to be friendly. Immediately, Whitman pulls a gun out on them, only to then surrender it seconds later, even though he has the upper hand here, which then of course leads to Lara getting captured and taken over to another group of survivors from the Endurance who have also been captured. One of the crewmates recognizes her and begins to get up and run towards her, but is quickly pushed back down by another armed castaway. Lara pleads for them not to be harmed, and then this happens. Hey everybody, Editor Steve here. Just wanted to step in for a moment just to sort of say that I'm going to just avoid talking about the specifics about this particular topic altogether in this video. I did originally write a piece where I was going to detail some of the quotes and comments that some of the developers made in articles like Kotaku and other media outlets, and then call them out for it. But then I suddenly thought that I really don't want to reopen the wounds that this left on the fanbase and on the series again. So if anyone is actually interested in finding out the specifics, they're more than welcome to look at it themselves and they can be the judge about it. I'm not the right person to really talk about this particular subject. I just feel very uncomfortable about it. So yeah, sorry to anyone who was hoping for me to do an absolute takedown of this. I have my own personal thoughts about this scene. I think that the use of attempted sexual assault as a narrative device for a female character is something that really shouldn't be a thing in this day and age. I'm well aware that if you fail the QuickTime events in this particular moment, it doesn't end up being the case, you just get killed. But it skirts so close to the line of it that it might as well still be. Oh, and if you're wondering what the guy here says in Russian, because even with the subtitles on it says talks in Russian, then you'll be pleased to know that a friend of mine recently translated what this guy says to Lara, and it roughly translates to something along the lines of, "You remind me of my sister." So yeah, I guess we could add implied incest to the list of complications with this scene too. Not a fan, some of you are. And to those people, more power to you, but I just don't feel comfortable talking about this and reopening old wounds. So we're going to continue with the video now, and yeah, stay in school, kids, I guess. Moving on from that, however, we're then forced into a desperate situation where we're helpless to save our fellow crewmates from getting killed, as we take any moment we can to try and escape alive. This segment is essentially a tutorial for the game's stealth mechanics, where you can crouch walk like the best of them to hide behind cover and sneak past enemies undetected. Of course, to add extra drama to the proceedings, the whole place is also on fire, for reasons I've yet to fathom. Further along, we manage to make our way into a crawl space to hide from the incoming patrol, only to then be immediately found by Captain Bad Touch a few seconds later. She's then forced to come out of hiding when he pulls a gun out on her, and here's where we get a Bad Touch QuickTime event, which, yes, you can fail, and it results in him just killing her and nothing else. But succeeding gives him a swift knee to the KG balls, giving Lara a chance to try and escape. Sadly, this doesn't work, and she's pulled back in for yet more uncomfortable invasions of privacy, but this time she's finally had enough, and we get another QuickTime event that allows Lara to take a big old chunk of the guy's ear out. Taking this moment to go on the attack, she charges into the guy and knocks him down to the ground, causing him to drop his handgun. Here's where you get brief control of Lara to aim and shoot him, so of course I shot him in the dick. But he's able to quickly pin you down and go to wrestle the gun away from your hands, leading to a very tense quick-time sequence in order to stop him from killing you. Once you've succeeded, you are finally able to headshot the guy and blow his skull open like a piñata, causing various levels of brain matter and blood to spray all over the place in glorious visceral fashion. Lara then shakes the guy off and points the empty gun at him, watching him slowly gurgle and wheeze out of this plane of existence, before finally allowing herself a moment to breathe and realize the gravity of what she has just had to do.
Oh, God!
It's a harrowing and dark emotional moment for the character that shows just how much this ordeal has affected her. She's shaken, physically sick from her own actions, and is a truly broken woman barely struggling to deal with everything that has just happened. A truly powerful scene full of melancholy and drama. Which is then immediately undercut by the next segment where she reclaims her weapons and then proceeds to ruthlessly gun down every single person left alive without a second thought.
Action! Stay away from me!
Reload! My eyes, the goggles do nothing.
It kind of defeats the point of that narrative moment if you're asking Lara to gun down all of these people almost immediately after showing her being traumatized over killing just one person. But I get it, sometimes compromises have to be made in order to preserve the gameplay flow over telling a cinematic story. Sooner or later though, one of those two things is going to have to take priority over the other for the greater good, and whichever way you look at it, that's going to be a difficult thing to have to deal with. But I can't help but feel that Anniversary did do this type of moment a lot better. This is certainly a much more harrowing first kill scene than the one we got in Anniversary, where we had to gun down Larson in cold blood to get through to the Great Pyramid to stop Natla. But where the reboot leans on raw shock value for this particular moment, Anniversary's first human kill moment is more nuanced and, in my humble opinion, has more of an emotional resonance to the character. Sure, this Lara is showing that she's a born fighter, someone who, when pushed, will do what it takes to survive, and there's no denying that this scene is very effective in putting us in her shoes during this hellish situation. But Lara, and by extension the player, doesn't get a moment to deal with the emotional toll this moment in her life would have had. It's just swept under the rug too quickly, and outside of a brief call from Roth and a campfire journal, it's never really brought up again.
Lara, are you there?
Yes.
I can see smoke coming from the old ruins. Are you okay?
Oh, God. Roth, I'm in trouble. They're killing people.
What? Who?
Men.
Innocent men?
I don't know why. I had to kill some of them. I had no choice.
That can't have been easy.
It's scary just how easy it was. You've got to warn the others, Roth.
Don't worry about them right now. You just do whatever it takes to get to me, Lara.
I'll try.
Swap over to Anniversary and the story is a little different. It's nowhere as emotionally visceral or graphically violent and melodramatic, but it's subtle at what it does, and perhaps more crucially, it's a moment that we actually see Lara struggle to deal with right until the final moments of the game. More importantly, the big difference is in who she kills. That Russian dude was just a generic mouth-breathing pervert with a hard-on for violence, so killing him felt good and satisfying and justified. He was evil. He deserved to die. Larson Conway is the complete opposite of this. He's a charming and likable character that Lara clearly has some history with and possibly holds a level of amicable respect for as well. He's just a man doing what he was paid to do, which no doubt would have involved killing some people at some point, sure, but the fact that Lara hesitates to gun him down at first says way more than words ever could. Sure, Larson wasn't any saint, but the fact that we're shown a scene not long before that level of him actually going out of his way to purposefully miss a kill shot and spare her life shows that there's more to him than we realize, which is why when it comes to the act of Lara gunning down Larson in cold blood that it feels different, more personal, more senseless. We feel more like we're partaking in something that we really don't want to do. And then by the time that Lara realizes what she's done, it's too late. The deed is done. There's blood on her hands now, and it's all because of something she chose to do for admittedly more selfish reasons than she probably realizes. Ultimately, it comes down to personal preference to decide which version of these scenes that you like the best. Both have their own pros and cons, and both succeed at setting out what they wanted to do in different ways. But for me, it's the questions raised in Anniversary about Lara's character that I find to be a more interesting discussion than I do in this game. So now that you're all tooled up with your first weapon, it's not long until you find some ammo and start popping some heads. And oh boy, does this game's combat feel very good to play. Of all the Tomb Raider games I've played up until this point, this is by far the more complex, intuitive, and easy to use and precise combat system of the lot. It certainly lacks the acrobatic flamboyance of the previous games where you could jump and flip around the place, but it suits the more grounded and scrappy tone that this game goes for. While I do miss that element and think it's as much of a part of the series' DNA as the puzzle solving and the platforming, its absence makes complete sense here. Someone shipwrecked on an island full of strange people trying to kill them wouldn't be backflipping all over the place. They would be trying to conserve energy and use more guerrilla-based tactics to fight back, not trying to execute a triple backflip somersault whilst also shooting people mid-air. If you've played any modern third-person game over the last 10 years, then chances are you're already familiar with this form of cover-based shooting. You can move about with the left stick in any lateral direction and use the right stick to aim your weapons at your next target. You now have a melee attack with the pickaxes, which you can use to flail madly around at your enemies with, execute a well-timed sneak attack, or can be used in tandem with the new dodging mechanic to counterattack an enemy and deliver a brutal hit. Switching between weapons is super straightforward, with all 4 directions on the D-pad now assigned to each weapon type, with the ability to switch out different attachments and ammo types as you unlock them. Most of the takedowns and more advanced moves unlock as you progress through the game and gain enough points, which you use at base camps to become stronger. Now! Certain attacks work best with certain enemy types, such as the shield carriers who can only be taken out from behind, but with a quick dodge and employment of pocket sand, you can stun them long enough to finish them off with a quick attack. However, I'm playing this game on PC, and on PC you can use a mouse and keyboard to quickly headshot just about anything from any distance. In fact, this game is downright broken at times with just how much mouse aiming trivializes a lot of the combat sections of this game, to a point where I actually felt like I was cheating because of how easily I was popping off headshots with my pistol. There were sections where I had to use other weapons to get through it, but for most of the time I actually had to force myself to switch to other weapons so I could give the other ones a fair go, because the pistol was just that good. There are 4 weapon types in this game to discover, and they can all be upgraded with additional parts that grant them various bonuses. The upgrades you can create for these guns are mostly standard things like increased recoil, not increased recoil, Jesus, that'd be worse. Increased reload speed, reduced recoil, and enhanced damage output. But some of the upgrades you can give to these weapons almost completely change the way that they look, to a point where it's almost a completely different type of weapon. It's like the Ship of Theseus paradox, but for guns. Some weapons also serve a double purpose by offering extra ways to open up your environment. The shotgun, for example, is not just an expert of blowing holes in skulls, but also works great for blowing holes in walls cluttered with junk. The rifle seems a bit basic at first, but you later come across a grenade launcher attachment which also allows you to blow more holes in walls. I'm sensing a pattern here. Perhaps the most versatile weapon of this game is the bow, as you can not only use it to make silent takedowns or shoot the bad men in the PP, but you can also find additional arrow types later on in your adventure, which then open up yet more avenues for discovery even in previous areas. The first being the fire arrows, which naturally you can use to set people on fire and make things go boom. And the second are the rope arrows. Now these can be used to shoot into these posts here with these white "please mistress shoot me with these rope arrows" ropes wrapped around them. This can have multiple applications, such as being used to zipline across a gap, hold an object in place, or to use them to attach to something that you can then pull towards you. This mechanic becomes a core part of this game's puzzle solving and traversal, and in a lot of ways it makes this game feel more like a Metroidvania style of game over an action game, and I really dig that. It's small things like this that can really help to make you feel like you're making great progress. Going to old areas with new gear in order to unlock new areas, to get new gear, to go to old areas to unlock new gear is always good in my book. But the cherry on top of all of this are the controls, which not only makes controlling Lara feel more intuitive and accessible than ever before, but it also helps to make the combat feel like less of an afterthought than it had done in previous games. Though I would be lying if I said that I didn't miss the acrobatic flair from those previous games. Soon after shimming up a narrow crack in the cliffside, we then arrive in time to see an injured Roth using 2 pistols to fend off an attacking wolf. Lara comes to his aid and the two briefly reunite before Roth passes out from his wounds, leaving Lara alone once more. Before passing out, Roth tells Lara that one of the wolves stole a food pack containing the lifeboat transmitter as well as some medical supplies. So now that he's out cold and immobile, Lara has no choice but to go out and find the pack herself. This area has you exploring your surroundings for a way to the wolves' den up top and to find more resources and hidden collectibles too, should you wish. You have more documents and scrap to find, but you can also collect GPS caches that reward you with bonus experience, and there is also the first of many optional tombs that can be found in this game here as well, which can only be completed once you've acquired the climbing axe from Roth. Yes, we have a Tomb Raider game where the tombs are optional. And this is where a lot of people, including myself at the time, took major issue with this game. Having tombs, the very thing that the main character of this series is known for raiding, be optional, just seems utterly absurd when you stop to really think about it. It would be like a Sonic game where you don't have to run anywhere, or a Mario Party game where the objective wasn't to totally dick your friends over and win no matter the personal cost. But upon revisiting this game for this video, I can kind of see what they were trying to do with this. In the context of Lara's current predicament, it would of course make no sense for her to stop everything that she was doing to go and search some random caves for shiny trinkets. But the game does have to have tombs to explore somewhere, so the compromise was made to have them be optional so that the player can choose to either explore them then and there or come back to explore them later during the post-game section. The later games did do a better job of interweaving more of these tombs into the main narrative in order to make them more compulsory and less optional, but it was still weird at the time of release to be playing through a game in a series where the main focus should be tomb raiding, but it wasn't really about tomb raiding. So I guess this is where you could say that the series started to sail into uncharted territory. Yep, I did the joke, I'm off, bye. I suppose I better get this out of the way whilst I'm on the subject now. But yes, this game drew a lot of comparisons to the Uncharted series at the time, which by this point had 4 games under its belt, and was often labelled Dude Raider by some very, very clever individuals. Well done them. Primarily this was because of the major shift in focus to a more cinematic action set-piece affair than the series had seen previously. Sure, the series had always had set pieces of sorts to play through, the last 3 games more so than the core design era ones, but they were never as much of a focus as they are here. These sections mainly consist of Lara running through a dangerous situation, avoiding being crushed, trapped, burnt alive, or being shot by the various enemies you encounter in this game. At various points, parts of the environment will change to throw Lara into more danger and force her to think on the fly in order to survive. One of the more common things to happen in these moments is to have the ledge or foothold that Lara has grabbed a hold of suddenly break away, causing her to fall to another area or have to grab a hold of something else for dear life quickly in order to avoid a grisly fate. Whilst this sort of action-driven spectacle is fun and entertaining and can often add a lot of drama and urgency to many scenes in this game, it's often overshadowed by a series that did this sort of thing numerous times to a point where that became synonymous with that series. Had Uncharted come out after Tomb Raider, I can guarantee that we would be seeing a much different story. The tombs do offer a nice reprieve from all the tumbling and shooting that you do in this game, and actually put you in situations where you have to use your noggin in order to solve puzzles. Who'd have thought? They each have a single objective, which is to find a way to get to the chest containing the shiny thing. Admittedly, these puzzles all boil down to using physics and moving some things about, but for the most part they're a fun enough diversion to invest your time into. Thankfully, it's not long until you are able to enter the tomb, so for now you can enter the wolf's den and retrieve the pack to bring it back to Roth to heal his wounds, and come back to this later. Roth then remarks at Lara's skill with dressing his wounds, and the two of them share a brief friendly exchange before Lara is tasked with climbing up to the top of a distant radio tower to broadcast their SOS signal. Now that you have the climbing axe, you can climb certain walls to gain access to new areas, and for the majority of the rest of the game, this is the tool that you'll be using to get from place to place. The path to the radio tower is of course littered with several enemies who are out to kill you, but if you sneak past enough of them and are smart enough to take out the giant spotlight they're using, you can gain a massive tactical advantage and dispatch them all quietly with relative ease, allowing for a much less stressful time. This area also has you entering a big concrete industrial looking building, which is a far cry from the traditional feudal Japanese buildings from before with its big metal gas pipes, computer terminals and electric generators. And this is because these buildings and the radio tower that you're working towards were all remnants from World War II. The gas in these aforementioned pipes is of course toxic, but also, more importantly, made from high quality Atlantean farts. It's also here where you get to collect the submachine gun, and because I'm such a nice guy, I chose to put this guy out of his misery. You're welcome. However, my benevolence was not reciprocated when I entered the next room to be immediately blinded by 2 giant spotlights and greeted by an ambush. Like, rude. But, of course, with the power of mouse aiming, I was able to channel my inner Jane Wick and take them out pretty quickly. And not long after doing that, Lara arrives at the main control room for the radio tower. Which, of course, isn't working at all. So guess what? We're now going to have to climb all the way to the top of the radio tower to access a maintenance panel so we can broadcast the SOS signal. Yay. Heights. First, let's get the obvious out the way and say that this section of the game is just absolutely breathtaking to look at. The snow-covered mountains coupled with the sunrise is just the perfect storm of elements that really help to cement this moment in your mind. If anything, it will help take your mind off having to climb up a dangerous and rickety communications tower in the middle of a blizzard, because it's just so nice to look at. Of course, you have the occasional scare when parts of the tower start collapsing when you're climbing on it, but eventually you manage to make it to the top and patch yourself into the maintenance panel and start your broadcast. You dial into various radio frequencies and success! You get a response from a nearby aircraft and you all celebrate knowing that you'll be soon safe. Or so you think. I'd hazard a guess that this section here is the one that people remember the most from this game. Not only because I think it's terrifying if anyone like me has vertigo, but also because this part here goes hilariously south extremely quickly. It's at this point the game pulls up a chair, sits down like Captain America and goes, "So, you've managed to send an SOS. Now comes the fun part, where you have to make a signal for them, so you zipline down to the ground again to find a conveniently placed fuel depot nearby. Then after creating a fuel leak, finding a fire starter, twisted fire starter, you ignite the fuel tanks to create the signal they needed. All looks well, the rescue plane flies into view. But then, this happens.
Well, that's certainly one way to land a plane!
So, not only does lightning come completely out of nowhere to strike the plane to destroy it, but it just so happens to careen straight down towards where Lara happens to be standing. So then we have to take notes from the Prometheus school of running away from things and hightail it down a massive slope whilst a flaming plane turbine chases us. To add extra spice to this rather fancy dish, we also have to move out of the way of oncoming barricades to avoid becoming Lara Croft pate. And as the final creme de la fuck you for dessert, the game throws you another turbine, just as you're dangling off a ledge. Thanks, game. I need new pants. And that dinner was awful. Naturally, it's not long until after that the game throws us our next objective when we see the plane's pilot floating helplessly down towards the mountains in a parachute. So off we go to try and save the poor guy before he becomes the next cover star of Yamatai's Hottest Human Sacrifices 2013. But sadly, when we eventually get to him, he's stabbed by one of the shield enemy types mentioned earlier, and now we get to learn how to defeat them. Soon afterwards, we get a chance to catch our breath at another campsite, and Roth calls us to find out what the hell just happened. Shortly after arranging to meet him again, we're then captured by a rope trap and hung upside down whilst some big hairy men start shooting at us. Thankfully, freeing yourself is as easy as just shooting the rope and allowing yourself to fall to the ground, but then Lara sees the discarded rope and gets an idea to combine it with the bow, with the next segment essentially acting as a tutorial on how to use them together. Finally, you arrive back with Roth, who's clearly had his daily cup of Yorkshire tea gold and has managed to somehow hobble his way all the way up to the top here to meet you. The two discuss just what happened right before the second pilot from the plane calls for help over the radio.
I can't just leave him out there alone. I need to get to him.
Sometimes you've got to make sacrifices. For Yorkshire, Lara.
I know about sacrifices.
No, you know about loss. Sacrifice is a choice we make, like drinking PG tips so our friends can enjoy a proper Yorkshire brew. Loss is when we have that choice made for us, like forgetting to go to the shop and having to resort to drinking coffee.
I can't choose to let him die, Roth.
Yorkshire tea. Let's have a proper brew.
The area you go through on your way to find the pilot offers a decent amount of platforming to test you on everything you've learned so far. Lots of places to use rope arrows, several walls to use your climbing axe on, and of course more hairy douchebags to sneak up on and take out. You can also come across the second optional tomb of this game called the Hall of Ascension, which I think has to be my favourite tomb of the lot. From a visual point of view, it's of course stunning to behold, but it also for me has one of the more interesting puzzles of this game. You have a strong wind blowing through the building and a platform that you have to turn a crank to raise up to the top balcony. The problem is the wind blows the platform out of reach every time you move it, so you have to find a way to shut off the wind so you can raise the platform, then climb onto it and then have the wind blow you up to the nearby ledge. I'd hazard a guess that for a lot of people this tomb caused them the most hassle because it can be rather tricky to get the timing right. But with a little patience and some trial and error, you're rewarded with yet another shiny thing. And a gun part? Finally. An ancient Japanese Beretta. After that trial, you then traverse another open area to find more collectibles, which for some reason include bird eggs. And then you eventually find Captain Jessup's flare and parachutes, but he's nowhere to be found. Following his trail leads to a series of caves containing several statues hinting at the Sun Queen Himiko's reign and the influence she had on her people, so much so that people apparently travelled far and wide on pilgrimages to see her. This all leads up to a grand reveal where we see Himiko's temple surrounded by a large ravine with an unnaturally strong wind attached to it, and a bridge connecting it to the mainland that looks kind of rickety. A wounded Captain Jessup is just lying there on the temple steps, which naturally ends up being a trap set up by Matthias in order to kill Lara. As soon as she gets near to him, several explosive barrels are then thrown onto the bridge like frickin' Donkey Kong, and they're all set alight to cause them to explode and destroy the bridge. Just as Lara is knocked out and ordered to be killed, a group of supernatural beings called the Oni arrive to kill the cult members and take Lara back into captivity. For a third time. This time in Lara's Adventures in Captivity, the game, we wake up dangling from the ceiling in what I can only describe as the worst Airbnb of all time. So, once again, you're left to work out how to break free from captivity and escape again. Only this time you're having to break out of a huge compound patrolled by gigantic supernatural beings. And this place... this place is fucking creepy. If the bodies hanging from the ceiling weren't indication enough that this place is 50 shades of fucked up, then don't worry, as I'm sure all the piles of human bodies and various organs and skeletons on the floor will give it away too. Sadly, Captain Jessup is amongst the bodies and his radio has been completely destroyed, so we have no choice but to find a way to escape whilst making as little noise as possible.
Oi! Some of us are trying to sleep round here!
Soon after, you walk past another group of skeletons that act as this macabre diorama of this temple's history during World War II. Lots of soldiers with giant arrows sticking out of them, some of them being tied up to posts and executed, and some dying whilst trying to fight back against the Oni. Annoyingly, there's a giant wooden barricade stopping our progress, but thankfully some lovely skelly boy was able to hold onto his trench gun so we could just take it and blast the barrier out of the way. Thanks, skelly boy.
No problem, Governor.
Of course, doing so makes a lot of noise and spooks a few people out nearby, but you're okay to continue on and climb into the next area where we hear this infamous line.
I hate tombs.
Now, a lot of people who don't like this particular game like to use this line here as further proof that Crystal Dynamics are choosing to shit on the franchise's legacy in order to make this version of Lara look better. And from a certain point of view, I guess I can see why that would solidify that argument, but after playing through the game again and hearing the line in context, I don't get that vibe from that line at all. And if anything, this comes across like anyone who would be stuck in this situation and what they would actually say and how they would react. I think it would take a special type of psychopath to actually find this all endearing, in all honesty. What, you mean to tell me that if you were stuck in this nightmarish hell situation where you're surrounded with rooms full of corpses being chased by supernatural beings with big sticks, that you would find this all endearing? No. This tomb is the most important one of the lot, as it contains a coffin with the body of the Sun Queen Himiko.
already here.
who is very, very dead. However, the mural surrounding the coffin reveals something extremely important, and that is the Ascension fire ritual used to transfer Himiko's power into a new human vessel. The pilgrimages detailed on the walls were also that Himiko could lure potential hosts to her island, and then once a suitable host was chosen, the ritual was then performed to transfer her power into another body. However, before Lara can fully decipher what all of this means, she's accosted by more cult members and is forced to take them out before traveling further into the temple. A short, terrifying walk later, and she encounters yet more enemies in a giant windy room, with giant green bells covered in that white rope that you can conveniently use your rope arrows to pull. But the idea here is to use the wind and the rope arrows to pull the big bell into the even bigger bell, and cause it to crash through the floor so you can escape. Of course, this causes you to tumble out of the frying pan and into the fire, as right as you slam onto the floor below, you're then chased out of the temple by a very pissed off Oni. But of course, because that threat alone isn't intense enough, the game has the entire corridor start to collapse out from under your feet and then throw you around like a sock in a tumble dryer. Then has you jump off into a bridge that gives way, and then has you sliding all the way down to a hidden cave. Jesus. She manages to take a few seconds break before Sam manages to call her back using a radio she stole off of a guard. She tells Lara that she's been kidnapped and stuck in a Japanese castle where the guards keep mentioning something called... And then it clicks. Himiko is having a barbecue, and Sam is the meat. So Lara immediately calls Roth to tell him to bring drinks, but Roth informs Lara that he's already on his way there, as the others have also been captured as well. Great. So after a quick pit stop at a campfire, it's off to break Sam out of Castle Yamatai. But of course, it's not as simple as walking up to the front door, and instead you get thrown into yet more peril after trying to cross a riverbed. The water is too powerful for Lara to fight against, and she ends up sliding down another obstacle course and ends up being spat out into the shell of a crashed plane. She lands on the plane's windscreen, causing it to slowly crack out from under her, much like that scene in the Lost World Jurassic Park. Mercifully though, there's a parachute within arm's reach, and she's just about able to equip it, just as the glass shatters and sends her falling to the ground. You press a button to pull the first parachute, which of course fails, so you do the same thing again for the reserve chute, and thankfully, that works. So now you're hastily careening towards a lot of trees, so you have to maneuver yourself around them to avoid becoming a Croft kebab. And I guess even the developers realized that Lara surviving this much punishment without so much of a scratch was becoming a bit too unbelievable, because after she slams down to the ground via a couple of tree branches, she succumbs to her earlier injuries and clutches her wound from the beginning of the game. Of course, for good measure, they make her tumble down yet another bloody slope, but this time the screen goes monochrome and fuzzy. Ooh. And now it's time to explore everyone's favourite part of this game, and by favourite I of course mean the opposite, Shantytown. Shantytown is widely regarded as the weakest part of this game by a lot of people who have played it. There are a lot of annoyances and weird design choices that all combine to form a pretty unpleasant experience, honestly. Chief amongst those is the level design itself, which can often be quite convoluted and tedious to navigate through, to a point where I felt like I had to force myself to explore areas in order to find collectibles I needed. This is also a combat-heavy area, with several explosive barrels littered all around the place, and several different areas for enemies to hide away and take potshots at you. But what marries all of this together, however, is the visual design of this area. I get that shanty towns are by design meant to look like a bunch of worn out and rusty shacks barely being held together, but the whole thing just looks so overly busy and cluttered, and not in a good way. It ended up making my eyes just glaze over and stop being able to pick out important things like people you're supposed to be shooting at, for example. Everything just ends up blending into the background far too often, to a point where I could swear I was being shot by a ghost or something. It also doesn't help that this area makes the drab, dry, muted, undersaturated color palette of this game really start to begin to assault the eyes. Can we just agree that this era where everything looked brown was just a terrible idea from the start? Yeah? Cool. Glad we're on the same page. For the first part of this area, you're handicapped by the wounds that you've recently sustained, meaning that you can't climb up ledges or perform any other activities until your wounds are healed. You're still able to shoot people and dodge attacks with no movement penalties whatsoever, so if anything, this segment serves as a thinly veiled excuse to keep you from going a different way and getting lost. Once you make it to the crashed helicopter, you get a sequence straight from Rambo 3, where Lara uses a lighter she scavenged from a dead pilot to heat up an arrowhead so that she can use it to cauterize a wound. This scenario prompts Lara to combine the lighter with the arrows to give her the fire arrows, and after a short catch-up with Roth, it's not long until she's forced to put them to good use. Further up, you get to the next optional tomb called the Well of Tears, from all the fans still asking for remasters, which is yet another physics puzzle room. And then after fighting off this game's bajillionth enemy horde encounter, you find Grim, who is just within reach of Lara's position. Of course, Lara doesn't have a way to climb up to him, somehow, so she has to go the long way around to get to him instead. Which of course affords the crazy people enough time to capture Grim and use him to force Lara to surrender. Just as Lara goes to do so, elderly Limmy manages to break free and take a couple of them out, but just as he takes the third person out, he's grabbed and pulled off the ledge with him, saving Lara, but ultimately meeting with a grim fate. I'll just leave. Roth manages to snipe away some ruffians attacking Lara, and the two of them lament Grim's death and formulate a plan. That plan involves Lara sneaking into Takeshi's castle via this bridge, whilst Roth provides covering fire. Oh, and it's too dangerous to walk across it undetected, so Lara will of course need to climb across using the underside instead. You know, for funsies. Once inside, you stumble upon a chamber where you witness Sam seemingly about to be burnt alive like a human yakitori skewer, in order to serve as the live sacrifice for the Sun Queen so that all other survivors can finally leave the island. Lara tries to stop them, managing to take out just one person before getting herself captured. Again, and then she's forced to watch as they continue with the ritual anyway. But just as it all seems lost, a huge gust of wind suddenly blasts through the chamber and puts out the fire.
She's the one.
Turns out Matthias has been using this ritual to get a response from Himiko as to whether or not Sam is a worthy enough vessel to transfer her long dormant soul right into. Kind of like what RuPaul does with drag queens every year, except more death and less death dropping. With Sam now being taken to the castle's throne room, Lara is then taken to be locked up somewhere else in the castle's depths. Luckily, Lara's a #survivor and is able to exploit man's greatest weakness, with a swift shot to the bollocks allowing her to escape. Emerging from the pool of blood she fell into, by the way, nice homage to that shot in Apocalypse Now, she's now left to scramble through a place I like to call the Chamber of Exploding Farts. Here we have more of the exploding fart gas from earlier, and you have to use it once again to take out your enemies to clear a way forward. Enemies that mostly consist of the same neckbeards you've been fighting all up until this point, but interestingly you also have to contend with these ravenous, almost golem-like prisoners who have been kept here and left to fend for themselves, which has understandably turned them cannibalistic. But eventually though, after much sneaky splody, and yet another instance of swinging a giant thing into another thing to open it, you have yet another episode of Lara Croft runs away from things exploding around her, which conveniently spits her out exactly where they happen to be keeping her friends. There's having one moment of convenience, and then there's having your main character always ending up exactly where they need to be. Come on! So of course you take out the guards and then use more exploding fart gas to solve a physics puzzle to free your friends. And doing so causes not only the floor below to collapse, but also sets off a chain reaction that causes the entire castle to be set on fire. How did this not happen earlier? You mean to tell me that these survivors have lasted this long without just being a little bit curious as to what setting that gas on fire would do?
You are the sun. You are the light. You are the storm that rages at night. We are your children. Wait for the day, bring us the dawn.
During your escape, you stumble upon Matthias's quarters with a noteboard and a bunch of photos of the island, with the words "No one leaves" written all over the place, kind of like the "Would you kindly" wall in the middle of Bioshock. She smartly takes the map that's on the wall and then continues to escape. and shortly afterwards finds Ned Flanders again wandering around completely unharmed and of course is still a suspicious, untrustworthy douchebag. He tells Lara that he's not being seen as a threat and has been allowed to move amongst the survivors freely as a result. Naturally, this naive, inexperienced version of Lara gives him the benefit of the doubt, and she leaves him in the hallway to be on the lookout for incoming enemies. In the next room, Sam is with Matthias trying to explain to Sam that Himiko's blood runs through her own, and how, because of this, she is the key to finally allowing people to leave the island. Once Matthias leaves to escape the collapsing castle, Lara briefly manages to free Sam from captivity again, and, hilariously in yet another moment of extreme contrivance, the only person left to guard Sam just so happens to be the same guy carrying all of Lara's stolen weapons. Wow. What luck! The two of them go to escape, but of course Whitman has been, air quotes, captured, so they end up splitting up to find a way out of there. Not by choice, I might add. Many combat encounters later, you exit the castle to be greeted by this lovely gentleman with a machine gun turret, who you end up drop-kicking and then blowing apart with a grenade launcher, sadly not causing him to explode into bits like in Tomb Raider 2. The grenade launcher is the next big upgrade, but is also another tool used to open up new ways to progress through areas. Some of you may have noticed in previous areas when you were exploring that there were various doors reinforced with steel junk, which when approached would abruptly tell you that you're missing the item needed to open it. Well, this attachment is exactly the key to doing this, and how you go by doing that is by simply aiming the launcher at the thing you want to open, and then pressing the shoot a grenade button at the door and blasting it open. Once you blast open the first of these doors directly in front of her, you get that aforementioned moment of triumph where Lara embraces her more ferocious and primal side and goes on the attack. The music swells, the enemies start to retreat and shout in disbelief at her now packing a grenade launcher, and it's a pivotal moment for Lara's character as she progresses from timid prey to a fully capable predator. It's a truly powerful moment for the character. She's been put through so much physical pain and torture by these dickheads, and now she's able to finally gain the upper hand on them and make them run in fear from her instead. She's the danger. She's the threat. She is the one who knocks, and she is coming for them. It's a great moment for the character that's sadly a little bit undercut by Camilla's line delivery. Don't worry, I'm not going to be one of these people who's here to do nothing but bash Camilla's portrayal of Lara, nor do I think it's a terrible performance. In fact, I think for the most part she's actually done a really good job with the character, considering what she's had to work with, and whilst also having to do the motion capture as well. But I would be lying if I said that there weren't moments where her British accent could sound a little iffy at times. A common complaint that I'd often see people having with this era of Lara is that the British accent sounded over the top or fake. But I don't think that most players even realise that Camilla Luddington is actually a British-born woman and not American.
Where are you from?
I am from a town in England called Ascot in Berkshire. And it's
like those things you wear around your neck.
Originally, she came from Ascot, Berkshire, and then spent the majority of her youth moving to and from the UK and the American education system, eventually deciding to move to LA to pursue an acting career in the TV and film industry there. So, as a result, she's primarily a person that speaks with an American accent in interviews and on shows, and even offset because she finds it easier for her to stick to an American accent whilst shooting. But even by her own admission, she's been known to frequently slip up and go a bit British from time to time.
I cannot do what Kevin McKidd does, and he spends a day flipping back and forth between accents for his character. If I did that, then Joe Wilson would sound probably very British. So even when I am not shooting in character, I keep this accent because it's easier for me to maintain sounding American all day.
In fact, her accent changes became so noticeable that Grey's Anatomy's writers actually wrote a scene where Camilla's character receives results from a genealogy test that tell the audience and her that she's actually mostly British. No joke. It happens so frequently they wrote it into the show to cover it up.
Is this here? I'm mostly British.
I actually discovered a film that she starred in made by Lifetime called William and Kate the Movie. Yes, this actually exists, and yes, It is god-awful, and in it she plays the titular role of Kate Middleton. And not only did some people think that her British accent sounded fake, but one critic went so far as to say that she even struggled to maintain it. This would explain why a lot of players noticed this version of Lara as having a more Americanized sound to her voice, because she's being played by a person whose accent is frequently living in two worlds. When it comes to certain lines like this one here,
That's right! Run, you bastards! I'm coming for you all!
sure, the words themselves are impactful and it's a powerful moment, but because we know Camilla is trying to maintain her British accent, she's overcompensating on her delivery to be more authentic, which has the opposite effect and can often sell her performance short and come off as sounding forced. In many ways, it does feel like an American impersonating what they think a stereotypical British accent sounds like, when the truth is actually quite the opposite. And I genuinely feel bad for Camilla here in this situation because she's clearly giving it her all in this game, and when she gets it right, she nails it. But her accent inconsistency can often undermine her performance, which is a shame. At the end of the day, Camilla Luddington's performance in this game is perfectly fine, and the fact that she also did her motion capture work for this game too is also really impressive stuff. But it does kind of help to illustrate how Crystal's focus is beginning to shift with this era of the series, by getting a big Hollywood-named actor to be the star of their new cinematic vision for the series, instead of a voice actor or someone from British TV.
Your name.
Eventually, after going on a murderous rampage, you find Sam, who is once again separated from you by a physical barrier. But instead of just, climbing over the fence to be with her, Lara instead tells Sam not to board the rescue helicopter for reasons we'll get to soon. After yet more dangerous climbing antics, you eventually see the aforementioned choppy boy in the distance and begin a mad dash to intercept it in time. Matthias sees Lara trying to escape across the bridges, so he decides to order his men to blast it to pieces with some makeshift artillery. The next sequence is an admittedly spectacular set piece where you're desperately trying to escape being burned alive whilst trying to warn Roth and friends to not take off in the helicopter. Just as you make it to the roof and you're about to jump to safety, the roof collapses and sends you falling into the fire. But thankfully we're saved by a small ledge and then have a dramatic moment where Lara leaps from the burning castle just as it explodes. And of course bonus cool points for it all playing out in slow motion. I actually really enjoy this sequence a lot, as I think that it not only fully delivers on the cinematic experience they're going for, but it also provides the most striking and memorable visuals of the whole game, save for the finale. The camera shots, the cinematography, the music, the increasing stakes, and the overall great pacing all effectively convey the high stakes of the situation and the peril that everyone is in. But it's not over yet. As Lara boards the helicopter, she's adamant that they need to land, otherwise the storm will attack them and force them to crash, much like the plane did earlier. The pilot has to be convinced, shall we say, to do this, but just as they go to turn around, the chopper is struck by lightning just as Lara predicted, and as they begin to crash, we cut to black. This confirms what Lara saw earlier at the castle in Matthias's room, and also in the chamber with the murals about the fire ritual. No one leaves because nobody can leave. The storm is a manifestation of Himiko's power that will strike down any vessel attempting to leave the island, and the ritual is the key to stopping the storm once and for all. Then, and only then, can people safely leave this island. Moments later, Roth wakes up pinned under the rotor blade of the crashed helicopter. He sees Lara's unconscious body a few feet away from him, and he manages to free himself to go over to her. Fearing the worst, Roth begins to perform CPR to resuscitate Lara, and a few seconds later she begins to wake up. However, just as he begins to drag Lara to safety, Matthias and his goons show up to take them down, and in a moment of true badassery, he pulls out one of his pistols to take them down. Unfortunately, he's not able to finish off Matthias as he runs out of ammo, so just as Matthias throws an axe at Lara, in a moment of heroic sacrifice he turns his body towards the axe in order to shield Lara from the blow. Not content with just being adequately badass, however, he then pulls out a second pistol and then proceeds to turn around and kill more of them before falling to the ground and leaving some poignant final words to Lara.
I can't do this without you.
It's okay, Lara. You can do this. Just remember, do it for Yorkshire. Yorkshire tea. Let's have a proper brew.
Joking aside, I think this has to be my second favourite character moment of the game, save for the moment Lara takes down Matthias. It perfectly demonstrates Roth as a surrogate father figure for Lara, whilst also showing him to be the clear inspiration for Lara's future persona, a persona that, at the time of writing, we have still yet to see properly return, but I digress. The deliberate close-up shots of the two pistols he was using also acts as a passing of the torch moment to signify this is a major moment in Lara's personal history. This moment also sets up another one later in the game, but we'll get to talking about that one in due time. The remaining survivors managed to catch up to Lara just after Roth's death, with Reyes initially blaming her for taking them all to this island in the first place. Reyes having been previously revealed to have had a romantic relationship with Roth, even going so far as to having a child together with him. A child that will sadly never get to meet their father now. Understandably, this makes Reyes act aggressive and hostile towards Lara from this point onwards, even going so far as to outright call her cursed because everyone around her ends up dead.
Seems anyone caught with you has a pretty low survival rate.
Reyes!
Better keep your distance then.
Oh shit!
The rest of the crew then give Roth a warrior send-off, with his body burnt on a funeral pyre. Lara then decides to stay behind a while whilst the rest of the crew head back to the boat on the beach. Moments later, Lara decides to then finally move on from Roth's death to rejoin her friends at the beach, taking a look at the map that she'd swiped from Matthias's room and surmising that the storm is an extension of Himiko's power. We then have our next section of gameplay where we have to make our way back to the beach via a cable car system back in Shantytown. During the trip, Lara conspires with Sam to help Reyes repair the boat, but then take it inland to the monastery so she can find the source of the storms and stop them so they can leave safely. Not soon after that, the tram you're riding on stops, and you're forced to make your own way down using zip wires, where, of course, you have yet more angry homeless men to shoot. This time, your arena of battle is on the skeleton of a ship suspended in midair for reasons. As the fight continues and you begin to whittle down their forces, another rather angry gentleman mounts a gun turret and ends up accidentally shooting out the steel ropes holding the ship in place, which naturally causes shit to go south rather quickly. And then yet another action set piece begins, and you have to partake in yet another episode of Lara Croft Person Who Slides Down Things.
Y'all get a Peter Pan right here off of this dam, right here!
But once you're at the bottom of the waterfall, you arrive at the beach with your crew waiting for you down at the broken ship, somehow having found a safer way to get there. How? They then tell you that Alex, the same guy we saw perving on a 14-year-old, has not returned from a trip to the Endurance wreck to retrieve a part to fix their boat. Shortly after Lara has been sent to retrieve a pulley off of one of the other ships nearby, we hear Whitman screaming for help, firing back at seemingly nothing. Lara, being already suspicious of Whitman due to his previous castle antics and from when they first got captured, calls him out on his shaky story, but the beef is soon squashed by Reyes before he can get questioned further. Lara then resolves to venture out to find Alex, who was last seen on the wreck of the Endurance, which then serves as our next level. Before she leaves, Jonah catches up to her and gives her the final bow weapon of the game, the compound bow.
It's powerful. Can shoot an arrow into almost anything.
The beach is the next open area of the game, with many places to explore for collectibles, another optional tomb, and a scary cave that you'll mistake for being a secret area, but will instead kill you if you try to enter it too many times. And several obstacles to climb that make use of all of your skills that you picked up so far. On the way, you can encounter perhaps one of my favourite side stories in this game. Initially, whilst exploring, you may come across either a toy train with a name on it or a soft toy rabbit, both things clearly belonging to a child. After exploring further, you come across a hidden area where you eventually find a wallet with a picture of two young girls standing in front of a small plane. Clearly, this wallet belonged to their father, and they all became stuck on this island during what was meant to be a fun little excursion, but instead it ended in tragedy. These stories within stories are fantastic bits of environmental storytelling as they are, but what makes this one stand out to me is that out of all of the other historical relics from World War II soldiers or from the island's own history, this is something that's from neither of those things. It doesn't do anything to enrich Yamatai's culture, nor does it seek to demonstrate the effects that the Pacific War had on the island either. It's a far more relatable tale that truly shows just how indiscriminate Himiko's wrath really is. It didn't just affect the people of the island, or soldiers, or warriors, but it also affected completely innocent people, people with families, people looking to take in just the island's natural beauty, or people just passing by. None of it mattered. Again, all of these small touches helped to make the game world feel more alive and lived in than it had done in previous games, and it incentivized me to want to seek out these collectibles in each area, not just for the free XP, but because I wanted to uncover more and learn more about this game's world. Once at the Endurance, you have a mini boss fight with the new gigantic enemy type that you have to shoot the armor off in order to actually damage them.
That's right! Now I'm going to kill you!
Too bad you will die.
And then once you've taken them down with the QuickTime events, you gain access to the final tool of the game, the Rope Ascender. This little device essentially allows Lara the ability to quickly travel up zip wires, as well as pull down sturdier or heavier obstacles with the rope. Its use is mainly for solving puzzles, and for making traversal a bit easier, but it can also have a tactical use in certain situations. Not many, but some. Once further into the ship, we get this nice little callback to the first shot of Lara in the game, acting as a narrative bookend at the same time to signify that we're nearing the end of our journey here. She briefly reminisces about her time with Sam at the university, picking up the photo that she had of them at their graduation. And then after looking at herself in the mirror on the back of the door of the locker, she heads out to find Alex. A few moments later, we catch up with Alex, who has been pinned down under some debris and is unable to move. We then have a brief puzzle that makes use of the new toy that Lara has collected, and we manage to use it to bust open the door so we can get to him. The good news is that Alex has the tools, but the bad news is that he's got a broken leg and they're both surrounded by cultists. So unfortunately, Lara has to leave yet another person to die, as Alex gives her the tools the crew needs whilst she's forced to escape the ship. In his final moments, Alex shoots a cloud of explosive gas which kills all of the surrounding enemies, but causes the ship to start exploding. So we have yet another episode of Lara Croft Runs Away from Things, where we have to use the rope ascender to zip out of the ship as it explodes around you. Once you've made it back to the camp, you break the bad news to the crew about Alex's demise, which of course goes down about as well as you'd expect.
When we heard the explosion, we thought...
Alex.
11 minutes later.
Once Reyes finishes the boat, we'll be back to civilization in no time. And what a tale we'll have to tell.
A tale? I hope I never hear Himiko's name again.
Himiko had been somewhat successful in transferring her
agrees
spirit
to give
into her
up
body,
and let Himiko inhabit her body. But she soon rises from her bed and looks into a nearby mirror, where the reflection of a sinister Himiko greets her. She shows her Sam's room, where Lara sees a scribbled mural on the wall including Himiko. Sam tries to fight Himiko's influence.
After some food, Lara heads off once more to search a nearby World War II base to find something that the soldiers believed could control the storms. This area of the game is what you could consider the final puzzle dungeon of the game, as the actual final area is just a straight-up action platforming sequence. Here you have to navigate through the base and eventually figure out how to lower this elevator to allow you to access the lower floors. It does admittedly feel a little bit like padding here to have this elevator break down and force you to get it unstuck, but it is what it is and it's easy enough to solve and get past. Once you're down below, you eventually come across the chamber with the thing that these people previously thought would control the storm. At the top of these stairs is a skeleton of a samurai warrior, one of many who protected Himiko during her reign. There is a sword sticking out from the abdomen of the body, showing that this general committed seppuku. Lara then removes the sword because she's basically the British Museum with a gun at this point, and finds a scroll hidden in the handle of the sword. This scroll basically confirms that Himiko's soul has been body hopping from body to body for generations. But due to a botched ceremony, her soul lies trapped within a decaying corpse. Only until her soul is fused with a new vessel will the storm stop and allow people to leave the island. Of course, we get yet another action set piece with waves of enemies pouring into the tomb and detonating the entrance, so we have to dispose of them before making our way back to camp through a different exit. In the distance, we hear the group being attacked by more cultists, but once we get there, all we see is a wounded Reyes on the floor and no sign of Whitman or Sam. Jonah tells us that Whitman made off with Sam back to the monastery and back to Matthias so they can complete the ritual. Reyes apologizes to Lara for not believing her, and Lara begins to explain to the two what she'd found in the chamber from earlier. Now they have to take the boat that they've just fixed inland to rescue Sam and stop the ritual from happening. And this marks the point of no return for anyone looking to explore for more secrets, tombs, or collectibles, as from this point onwards, the game goes into final chapter of the story territory and there's no going back. The next day, Lara and company head into the mainland so they can rescue Sam and stop the ritual. At the entrance to the monastery, we see Whitman with Matthias, who is dragging Sam along for the ride, now wearing some robes needed for the ritual. 2 storm guards are stood in the way, so naturally Whitman thinks he can use his charm to talk his way past. However, once he goes to reveal Sam to them as their new queen, Matthias holds back and waits for the guards to kill Whitman, serving as a distraction to allow them to slip by and enter the building. The next segment has us sneaking into the Storm Guard's stronghold in order to catch up to Matthias and Sam, where we bear witness to the sheer volume of Himiko's seemingly immortal army. As you're precariously shimmying across a ledge and trying your best to stay out of sight, you see a rather beefy Big Chungus being suited up for battle by some of the other soldiers. Unfortunately, just as you go to jump to another ledge, a skull gets knocked off and lands onto the floor, and immediately alerts every single Storm Guard to Lara's position, who immediately then begin to rain down arrows and fire to try and kill her. So we have yet another edition of Lara Croft, person who runs away from and slides down things, as we make our way to the penultimate combat area of the game. On the way, we stop off at another campsite, because apparently we have time to do that here, and we brave the harsh winds of Himiko's farts in order to get through to Sam! The Storm Guard enemies are easily the toughest enemies in this game. They will literally give no shits about where you are, how much cover you have, or if you are shooting at them. They'll either pepper you with enough arrows to turn you into a pincushion, or will run up to where you are hiding and fuck you up worse than the ending to Annihilation. It's a fun section to play through, honestly, and is a great end-of-semester exam to test you on what you've learned throughout your journey, and it gives you an excuse to put all those skills that you've spent hours upon hours amassing to good use, too. At the end of the gauntlet, you come face to face with Big Chungus, who ends up being swept away by another burst from Himiko's butt blunderbuss, with Lara just barely being able to hold on to solid ground. But she manages to do this and keep her footing, and is able to enter the next area, which is the final physics puzzle of the game, which, yet again, has Lara swinging a big thing into another thing. She then enters the next chamber with a set of statues all around this mural on the floor, and it finally dawns on her why they've needed Sam this whole time.
It's not transferring power, it's transferring a soul. All these queens, they're all you, Himiko. First and last. Oh God. And now you want Sam. Well, you're not getting her.
What do you say, dearie? Could you speak up a bit? I couldn't quite hear you because I'm an inanimate fucking object!
Then, once you've sat down at the game's final campsite, you then burst through the next set of doors to be faced with the Ziggurat of Himiko, and the daunting task of ascending to the top of it to rescue Sam. The finale of this game is a desperate race against time, as you work out how to climb the tower to reach Sam, whilst avoiding all of the falling debris and devastation happening around you. The music score here really helps to accentuate the heart-pounding trepidation that Lara is experiencing. Once you reach the top, you see that Matthias has Sam at the top of the tower, kneeling down in front of the actual corpse of Himiko. He recites some incantations to begin the ritual to transfer Himiko's soul into Sam's Dropbox, and immediately after he finishes, the corpse of Himiko awakens from her slumber and begins to siphon her essence into Sam. Of course, it's not going to be as simple as just walking up to the top, shooting Matthias in the face, and then taking your BFF/soon-to-be BFWB home for some much-needed therapy. So you're going to have to fight through not just a horde of neckbeards, but also a bunch of Himiko's elite Stormguard soldiers to get to her. Taking care of these enemies can be pretty challenging, especially whilst having to also fight the elements at the same time, but thankfully there's enough cover and ammo going around to be able to stop you from running into trouble. Jumping over a ravine, you come face to face with Big Chungus again, who seemingly has mastered the winds of Himiko's farts to allow him to be blown back towards the tower just in time to try and stop you. A boss battle then ensues, and you're tasked with taking down the beast's armor in order to deliver the final killing blow. It's your typical big bullet sponge enemy whose weak point is their exposed back type of affair, but the added threat of additional Stormguard soldiers endlessly spawning and taking pot shots at you really helps to deliver this dish a bit of extra flavor. Eventually, you land the killing blow and defeat the big Chungus, and finally reach Sam at the top of the tower, who is still locked in a trance by the ritual. Reaching for her bow, Lara then tries to fire a shot at Himiko to try and stop her, but Matthias shoots the bow out of her hands with one of Roth's pistols. Lara then tries to retaliate as Matthias charges at her, even managing to land her climbing axe into his back as a sort of thematic callback to how Roth was killed, but the two end up scrapping onto the ground with Matthias using said climbing axe to try and strangle her. Eventually, you manage to mash enough buttons to smack the axe into his face, grabbing Roth's pistol and then landing a grazing shot into his left shoulder. Lara then picks up Roth's second pistol as she defiantly stands up and aims both her mentor's pistols at Matthias. And it's here where we get to pull the triggers in tandem to rapidly fire off a volley of shots right into Matthias, causing him to fall off the tower and to his death. This moment right here is bloody great. I've waited a very long time to talk about this moment right here and why I love it so much, and why I feel it's a brilliant, brilliant character moment that works so well with the context of this game's story. What I really like the most about this moment is how natural this all feels. The whole moment Lara Croft becomes the Tomb Raider, or more accurately begins to become the character that we know her as today, could easily have come across as ham-fisted and forced if done poorly. But I wholeheartedly believe that Crystal, Rhianna Pratchett, and the rest of the writing team behind this scene did a fantastic job of not only making this moment feel totally earned, but also making this moment feel definitive. This was the moment that Lara Croft the Tomb Raider was essentially born. And not only is it the journey to get to this moment that solidifies this, but the added poeticism of using her mentor's weapons against the man who killed him further cements its importance. The fact was shown throughout the whole game, her unwillingness to not only carry both of Roth's guns at once, but also use them, adds extra emotional weight to seeing her finally be able to move past her trauma and use both of those weapons. It's a seemingly innocuous action at face value, having her pick up just 2 guns to face down her enemy, but even if you dig slightly deeper than surface level, you begin to see the subtext behind this choice and why it works so well for this story. It shows us that she's finally willing to embrace who she truly is, who she was always meant to be, and most importantly, it shows that she's finally ready for that torch Roth had previously carried to be passed on to her. As a player, it's also a really cathartic moment for us, as it feels like that this is what the whole game had been building up to. I can't say I speak for everyone here, but I certainly feel like I was counting down the hours until a moment like this started to happen. And as a longtime fan of the series, it felt like I was watching my patience finally be rewarded. That camera shot at the end is also a very deliberate choice, invoking that classic imagery of her dual pistol-wielding silhouette that we've seen in prior games, in movies, in marketing, everywhere. It's a moment that's stuck with me for a while, and I get a kick out of seeing it every time I've revisited this game, or even if I've seen someone play it on Twitch. It's so good. So good. Once Matthias is defeated, Lara is able to reach Himiko's corpse and drive a flaming stake of wood straight through her chest, like a vampire, finishing her off for good and bringing an end to the storms. As they begin to subside, a beam of radiant sunlight pierces through the clouds to further cement the imagery of Lara being everyone's savior. We also see that Jonah and Reyes have also survived their off-screen battle on the boat, and the two of them bear witness to Lara carrying an exhausted Sam down the hill. Then they all get on the boat and are finally able to leave Yamatai behind for good, with Lara reflecting on everything that had just happened.
I've been so blind, so naive. For years, I resented my father, doubted him like the rest. But he was right about so much. I just wish I could tell him that now. There are so many mysteries that I once dismissed as mere stories, but the line between our myths and truth is fragile and blurry. I need to find answers. I must understand.
The final scene of the game shows Lara and her friends being safe and sound aboard a cargo ship, with the crew having rescued them and promising to take them home. One of the crew members assures Lara that they will be home soon, but as he walks away, we see Lara beginning to read a journal containing details of other myths and mysteries around the world. She knows that she's not going home.
I'm not going home.
I literally just said that. So rude. And that's the main story for this game over and done with, and from here you can choose to save your progress and then reload that save in order to go back into the game and collect all of the collectibles for that sweet 100% completion. But there was also another thing that they added to this game which was a first for the series. Online competitive multiplayer. What? I'm going to be honest here and say that I never played this mode when this game was released, as to me, this type of gameplay mode is the antithesis to what Tomb Raider as a series is about. It's also a mode where I'd say that all the comparisons to the Uncharted series are totally 100% justified. This mode just comes across as being purely here to capitalize on the success that that game's multiplayer modes had on the PlayStation 3. This mode was developed by Eidos Montreal and not Crystal Dynamics. But rather than creating a mode that would better fit the series' ethos, such as maybe a collective Tomb Raid with a team of 4 players, or perhaps even have that mode be a totally competitive one, it's instead a purely combat-focused affair that's built around the game's whole scrappy survivalist tone. Most of the match types on offer here are team-based affairs, with one team being survivors and the other being Solari. One mode has you scavenging medical supplies to your team's base before the other team kills you, another has you looking to activate radio towers to call for help and prevent the other team from taking your batteries, and the remaining 2 modes are just deathmatch variations. Each member can choose to be one of the main game's additional cast of characters, including some that were cut from the game completely, and a bunch that were restricted to pre-order DLC. You can then customize loadouts for these characters which allow you to choose 2 weapons, an explosive type, and pick one of the many unlockable perks to be your offensive and defensive skills. Some of these weapons are even crossovers from other Eidos properties such as Hitman Absolution, and some are just straight up exclusives to this game mode, like, did you know this game had a minigun? Because this game has a fucking minigun! There are a total of 13 maps to choose from, with 5 of those just being limited to the free-for-all deathmatch mode. Each location is modelled after the look of a particular part of the main game, and has been made from scratch to better suit this arena style of gameplay. They all have their own set of unique features that can be interacted with, and you can also set traps at certain locations to catch people off guard. All in all, I really don't have that much to say about this mode, as it wasn't something that I really played, and sadly because of its waning popularity, it wasn't even something that I could really go to revisit for this video. In fact, the footage that you're watching was captured for me by a member of my community called Uncharted Raider, and as you can see, there isn't really anyone else playing this mode right now. So, thanks, Rob. You weird, beautiful man. If you're a completionist, then you'll certainly get a kick out of going back through each area of this game and combing through for secrets, as there are 171 collectibles to find in total, and they can often be hidden in some rather devious places. Additionally, there were extra costumes Lara could wear in this game that were added as DLC, with one being a callback to the outfit from their cancelled Ascension project, and another that's straight up the same outfit that Ellen Ripley wears in Alien. Originally, this game debuted on PC, Xbox 360, and PS3, with over 1 million copies being sold within 48 hours of its UK release. Then, after 3 weeks, Square Enix announced that it had sold 3.4 million units worldwide. So, of course, with sales figures that good, it was only a matter of time until a Game of the Year edition would hit our shelves. But it wouldn't be as simple as just a straight-up port. The definitive edition of Tomb Raider was released worldwide in January of 2014 on both PS4 and Xbox One platforms, with the graphics having been rebuilt from the ground up to make the most of the new console hardware. Interestingly, they decided to completely redesign Lara's look in this version, with a brand new character model made to showcase what a next-gen Lara Croft would look like. Things like subsurface scattering on her skin, different proportions to her facial features, and redone effects to her hair to make it move more realistically were all added to help make the character look more, air quotes, realistic. But I don't know, I can't help but feel that this is the most yassified version of her here. Just something about this model's look to me seems a bit off, almost like they tried too hard to make her look more determined than the previous model was. In fact, I think this model often loses a lot of the brilliant subtlety and nuance from the original actor's facial capture performance, to a point where it kind of completely transforms the emotion that she's supposed to be feeling in certain scenes. I'll play a couple of clips side by side so you can get an idea of what I mean, but essentially, to me, I buy the original character model as being a frightened and inexperienced fish out of water type than I do with this newer model.
Mayday, this is Lara Croft of the Endurance.
This is aircraft Nautilus 177 Alpha. Searching for you since the distress call from your vessel. Almost given up hope.
So had we.
got your approximate position, but we could sure use a visual.
I'll figure something out.
We'll be heading your way soon. Out.
It's all my fault.
Lara, listen to me. I sent an SOS from the Endurance before I abandoned her. Hopefully someone caught it. I've spoken to the others. We're regrouping at my location.
Please come and get me.
I have to stay here.
Again, this is totally personal choice and all that, but I feel like this is noticeable enough for it to be the difference between being able to empathize with a person in the situation that they're in, or end up not caring that much at all because you feel like they're going to be safe no matter what happens to them because they look like an action hero. And that is finally the end of Tomb Raider 2013, a bold, bombastic, if slightly derivative retelling of the origin story of everyone's favourite historical kleptomaniac. I'm not gonna lie, I was both dreading and really looking forward to revisiting this game for this series for a multitude of different reasons. Firstly, I was curious to see how well I felt this game held up over time, and I have to say that for the most part this game still is a fun time. Sure, most of the side characters aren't exactly anything to write home about, except maybe Whitman, Roth, Reyes, or Jonah, and the main villain of this game is honestly kind of forgettable. Let's be honest, you've already forgotten his name already. But everything else about this game just works really damn well. The combat and platforming is perhaps the best this series has been up until this point, with actions like climbing, shooting, abseiling, and dodging all feeling like really natural and intuitive things to be able to pull off. Mostly it was the drama surrounding this game since its release that I was really not looking forward to touching upon. I can vividly remember reading several interviews with members of the dev team where they would go to great lengths to emphasize how this isn't your dad's Lara Croft, and saying things similar to how she's an actual person in this game and not a bimbo in shorts. And that whole attitude of throwing their previous work under the bus just to make this game look better is why to this day there is still a large split in opinion on not just this game, but the two games succeeding it. One article in particular had an interview with the game's executive producer, and it has so many outdated, incorrect, and sexist attitudes towards the character and the series as a whole that I honestly thought at first that this was written by The Onion. So of course me going into covering this game years later in a fair and unbiased way was going to be extremely challenging for me. This whole zeitgeist surrounding an action game about a woman being trapped on an island and learning how to survive extreme conditions and discover who she really is was completely overshadowed by all this talk about how this game wasn't as sexist or sexualized as the previous ones were. This right here is why I've gone to great lengths in my previous videos to cover this topic. I not only wanted to show people what these games were actually like, but I also wanted to point out moments where they were problematic and discuss them. Or poke fun at them. People are so quick to dismiss the previous games as just being about tits and guns, when the reality was that they were nothing like that. It was just the marketing that was sexualized. I wanted people to see Tomb Raider how I saw it, and hopefully that would do something to dispel the negative notion that people, even still to this day, still use to describe the series' past. We didn't care about what she looked like, or how little or how much she was wearing. We just cared about the games being fucking good. Without all of that, and actually viewing this game on its own merits means that we can finally give this game the fair evaluation that it deserves. For the most part, I think this game holds up quite well. In spite of more than a few similarities to the Uncharted series, it manages to forge a grittier identity and tell a relatively interesting story. The cinematic flair and the motion-captured performances really help to solidify the various intense and emotional plights that Lara goes through, and often I'd catch myself wincing at various brutal injuries Lara sustained throughout her journey. The voice acting is also pretty solid all around too, and the cast do a great job of delivering grounded and believable performances. The environment could get a little bit samey from time to time, but for the most part they were fun to walk around and explore for secrets. For the most part. I'm looking at you, Shantytown. And despite any previous misgivings, Camilla Luddington gives a good first-time performance as Lara herself, with the finale being perhaps one of my favourite Tomb Raider moments of all time. I do also think that Crystal gets way too much hate for this game, despite the controversy surrounding her first kill and all. This is a solid action game that has some really great gunplay, some decent exploration, and some fantastic and horrific looking environments too. It's like playing a game based on the movie The Descent, which coincidentally was one of the main influences driving the tone of this game. Maybe throw in some Michael Bay and a dash of The Grey for good measure, and you've pretty much got Tomb Raider 2013. I can remember finishing this game for the first time and feeling really excited about where the series could possibly go next. We just played through the start of Lara's journey into becoming the Tomb Raider that we know, and theoretically we had multiple ways that this could all pan out, and no idea which direction they would take. Narratively, we were at the point where those original adventures that we grew up with could once again be revisited, maybe even reimagined with a modern twist to make them more contemporary, more exciting, more immersive, or even more cinematic. Or we could get something totally unique that we've never seen before that would showcase other parts of her life and other adventures that she's been on. We didn't know, and that was exciting. But no matter which direction the series would take, we all confidently knew that the next game would be a true return to form for an icon that we all knew and loved.
And now she's more than a survivor. She is going on her first great Tomb Raider expedition, right? And that's a big shift in tone for us. She's proactively going out there and seeking these clues. And this demo that we showed today, this live gameplay footage, is showing Lara going off into Siberia into a hostile remote place to try to uncover these clues. And it's an exciting thing. It's sort of a fantasy film and it's there you are live on stage. Look at that, looking good on the Xbox press conference stage. So tell me about, the gameplay of this game, because what I liked about the last one was the big, action-adventure violence, there was the smaller violence, one of the being a survivor. So are we going to lose some of that now because she's a bigger adventure? I mean, are there still that sort of big moments? So we have what we call the explosion, the big moments, and we also have the insult, the moments that make Lara grow as a character. Our number one goal is to make Lara the most human and believable character in video games. Right. And this is just the tip of the iceberg of what you're going to see Lara do throughout the entire game. And it's going to be a mix and match of a classic recipe of survival action with traversal, dynamic traversal, the combat that you know and love, and of course, yes, I know, more too. Right? Yeah. So tell us about the cast of the whole cast of characters besides Lara. I think it's fun because it's a previous game. It's great. You're seeing Jonah and Noah as Lara Croft, and these are returning cast members. And if you play the last game, you'll recognize this bond and you'll be excited about it. If you've never played the first game, Jonah still comes across, we introduce him, players who have never played the first Tomb Raider game will get to know him, and he becomes a great